seated. Dear ladies and gentlemen, dear audience, welcome to this panel, Digital, Sovereign and Connected, Digital Public Infrastructure and its Future. Thank you so much for being here today with us. My name is Andrea Donat and I'm the program lead of the GovStack initiative from GIZ side. So we are starting into this panel with a short, actually, why are we having this panel here today? With this session, we want to look a bit deeper into the topic of our topic, which hasn't been discussed that widely during this DPI summit this year. This is the topic of digital sovereignty. We are very happy to have the panelists, the dear panelists here on board to discuss this topic with us. So governments worldwide are embracing DPI to deliver services faster, more efficiently, and more inclusively. Digital public infrastructure is no longer just about efficiency. In service delivery, it is about resilience and trust. The big questions are increasingly political those days. The questions are, who controls the data? How do we prevent dependencies on on a few local global vendors worldwide? And how can nations stay sovereign while still being connected to global systems? At the same time, new risks are emerging. AI is only as strong as the data and the infrastructure behind it is. Cyber attacks are testing the resilience of national systems. I would like now to introduce you to our panelists today. Please welcome with us on the panel first, Katharina Menz. You are Head of Division of Digital Technologies at the German Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, the BMZ. Welcome to the panel. Welcome on stage.
Thank you. Good morning.
I would also like to welcome Mr. Ambassador Isaac Ochieng. You are the Director General of the E-Citizen Directorate in the Ministry of Interior in Kenya. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here.
Next to him, we have Yolanda Martinez. And Yolanda, glad to have you here. You are the Practice Manager at the World Bank for Latin America and Caribbean for Digital for Development. Welcome on stage as well, Yolanda.
Thank you. And I love GovStack.
And last but not least, welcome Mr. Badawi, and you are the Digital Transformation Advisor to the Ministry of Communications and Information Technologies in Egypt. Welcome on stage.
Thank you.
So today we're going to explore jointly how governments can stay sovereign and connected at the same time. Each of our panelists brings a piece to the puzzle that we are going to discuss here. So we're going to hear about national perspectives, we're going to hear about international organizations' perspective in supporting this, and we're going to listen to regional perspectives in all this. So first of all, I think I will going to join. Hello, can you hear me? Nice, thank you so much. So I would like to start this session with you, with Kenya in this case. Mr. Ambassador Ochieng. So maybe to give you all some context about Kenya first. Kenya is currently developing a dedicated DPI roadmap, which builds on existing frameworks like the Kenya National Digital Strategy and Master Plan 2022-2023, and sets out 5 guiding pillars to it, which are inclusivity, trust and security, interoperability, innovation, and sustainability. It also signals Kenya's ambition to become a digital hub in Africa, whilst retaining sovereign and building resilient integrated systems. So my question to you today, Mr. Ochieng, the first one would be, one of the roadmap's ambition is to move from strong national identity and payment systems into nationally owned and now interoperable by default DPI. How is Kenya navigating this trade-off between having sovereign control about your digital infrastructure and building openness for regional corporations at the same time? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question, and it's a great honor to be here. Kenya's approach has been, we've been balancing through digital sovereignty with strategic openness to regional and global interoperability through strong governance, policy, and technology frameworks. And we've taken it in four strong corners. One is political commitment and foundational infrastructure. Without strong political commitment from the top, this can never be achieved. And this achievement was actually strengthened in 2022 with the present administration when when DPI became the key thing in the government. So Kenya, that is why we've been able to achieve to integrate the entire government spectrum into the e-citizen ecosystem. And currently, that achievement has been quite fundamental and revolutionary. We came from 300 services to over 22,000 services currently. We had about 10,000 people, account holders. We are now having over 15.5 million account holders who are navigating through that ecosystem every 24/7. 500,000 people are navigating through that ecosystem looking for the services. The revenues have fundamentally shot up from less than half a million Kenya shillings to now, currently we're talking about 700 to between 800 million, that is about $7 million, to about $10 million every 24 hours. This is revolutionary. And what we are seeing, the National Treasury of Kenya is seeing the monies that they never used to see before. It is very transparent, it is 24/7, it is scalable, it is PWD compliant. It's unbelievable. 15.5 million account holders. It's unimaginable. Then additionally, Kenya is also a home to M-Pesa. I think we all know M-Pesa. Thank you.
I have an M-Pesa account.
We'll clap for you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
M-Pesa daily has 21 million transactions. It's unimaginable. And Kenya has a population of only about 55 million. So half of Kenya's population transact every day on M-Pesa. And that has transformed the financial sector. Then the data and infrastructure for sovereignty. We maintain sovereign control of our data and infrastructure through robust legislation and policy. Then we have data protection laws that were enacted in 2019. Then the government systems are increasingly hosted and on a sovereign cloud infrastructure that is through Konza. That is our techno city that we are actually building. And I will invite all our partners to come and visit and see how that ecosystem is transforming the DPI. Then 3, the technology and institutional integration. That is, we've done it through Maisha integrated database. Every Kenyan has the unique personal identifier, okay? And we're implementing that seamlessly, and it's been done. We are giving, because the people, before we got here, the national identity, people had, like me, and the people were born before, after 1995, they have their unique, their UPI, which is 8 digits. But with the current people who are being born and people turning 18, they are actually we have a 9-digit number that is very unique to all Kenyans. So what has this done? Then this has now been integrated into regional and legal harmonization efforts. So you can actually now access the neighboring countries, that is East African Community, through that national identity. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador. This is very impressive. Thank you so much. And a very good start into the discussion and a perspective from Kenya, like a concrete country perspective. But it also shows Kenya's experience, how digital sovereignty can be a national project and a regional opportunity at the same time. Thank you so much for giving this to us. Now I would like to turn to the next country on our panel, Mr. Badawi. We're very happy to have you here. And Egypt is a country that made resilience and security key pillars of the digital transformation strategy. We are very happy to learn more about that. Mr. Badawi, Egypt's digital transformation is guided by the Digital Egypt strategy, a comprehensive plan to modernize public services, strengthen cybersecurity, and promote a thriving digital economy. The country has built robust digital identity systems, expand e-government platforms widely, and invested in data centers and to ensure national control over your critical infrastructure. And I would also like to thank you for hosting us last year for the first DPI Summit 2024. That was great as well. Thank you so much. Now the question to you on this panel. Egypt has advanced rapidly in its digital transformation. How do you ensure that resilience and security are built in your national DPI architecture as well?
First of all, thank you so much for inviting us to this panel and actually moving from the Nile River banks into the shores of Cape Town, and how this across this year, and so with such a movement and the progress that I have seen so far from what we have seen last year to this year's across the different countries in the DPI implementation, and even in the knowledge and the questions asked, shows up a great maturity of the development that has been happening in the past year. So thanks to everyone, and thanks to all the organizers for that. Gladly when it comes to the digital infrastructure and actually digital services, the foundational layer of the digital infrastructure needs to be properly built and rolled out in an approach that actually enables the return much faster than that. So critical infrastructure projects, all governments know that's a long-term ROI projects. But we need to have this ramping up of the capabilities of digital services and digital payments, all of that, reaching out as soon as we onboard. So we have been investing in our digital infrastructure through different projects. The first of all is the fiberization of the whole networks all across the different government parts, and reaching out and connecting the whole of the government through a fiber connectivity setup that actually allows us to be able to do proper data exchange with proper speed. Expanding further into our internet speed that actually grew, the number is magnificent. It grew to be the second fastest in Africa, and at the same time, the fastest in Africa, and it came across different parts of investment into the internet speed, the internet lines, the marine cables, and all of that. But that doesn't even get it done unless we have the data centers in there. So we have invested in large data center projects that allows the government to have a proper allocation, but in an efficient manner. So our development that you have seen through Cairo last year, where we have developed our larger governmental data centers that hosts the government data, along with the resiliency capability that needs to be done across the different. So we didn't do just one data center. We did actually many, and we interconnected all of that through the fiber connectivity and the connections in there. The outreach connectivity and connecting the last mile, that's very important for the inclusion and for the resilience as well. So we have been investing in a program called Decent Life, where we're actually expanding the whole internet speed and the whole connectivity to the different areas of Egypt, even moving to the rural areas. And with that doesn't get us to drop the digitally illiterate. We started even expanding more into a wider governmental network of branches like the Egypt Post, which is reaching out to 4,000 office, where you get interconnected and assisted mood services for reaching out to those digital services. So we're covering up. For when we look at resiliency, we look at resiliency not from just a technology perspective, is how actually the whole ecosystem works to serve the citizen, whatever his state is. So his state is digitally literate, then he can reach out. So we need to put in enough infrastructure and connectivity to reach there. If he's digitally illiterate, then he can have the assisted mode that can reach him to that. And how can we implement all of that without cybersecurity? So cybersecurity as a baseline that comes in as security secure by design. When we started implementing those programs around Digital Egypt and the all different infrastructure, security secure by design came as the first one. So we started looking at how the technologies of air gapped, the technologies of having proper connectivity set it up for crucial services and critical services. When we started facing situations of resiliency where master nodes started failing, and we have faced that in last July, then the recovery was actually with a test. We were able to recover the services in 1 day. And that's something that when it comes to the critical infrastructure, that's something that's not easy to happen. How did that happen? Actually, is through a proper ecosystem that was built with a lot of standard operating procedures and proper interrelationships and intercooperations between the different government entities and the private sector of how can we reestablish the networks back on. But it's the procedures again. So when you talk about resiliency, you start with the basic services, emergencies, food supply, reach outs, and payments. So how are we doing that is actually through a national kind of councils and committees. So we have a National Council for Cybersecurity, we have a National Council for AI, we have a National Supreme Council for Digital Society. All of those are interconnected through moving team members. So for example, for us as MCIT, we are part of all of those councils. So we're driving the whole policies and the whole policy making and the whole decision making towards a whole single vision that comes into Egypt 2030 and it's reflected on the digital transformation for Digital Egypt 20. So the right aspect when it comes to security specifically is that we look at the different aspects of secure by design. And secure by design, it's not just about technology, it's about policies. How these policies are being implemented. So you need to have the proper institutions that are supported by the government and the private sector that are capable of supporting the whole ecosystem in doing that, because security resources are scarce. So you need not just to centralize, you need to enable with a larger set of programs on security. So you need to get security professionals pushed into the market every now and then, and that's how you actually maintain sovereignty, is having more of the skills on ground. So our educational program, our capacity building programs have been focusing so much on security so that we graduate every year hundreds of thousands of security professionals who get pushed into the market to support the government and the private sector. But the government and the private sector needs to work hand in hand. So such councils of cybersecurity, and they are inviting the different cybersecurity players into the game so that they can start forming up the policies. But all of that makes sure that you have enough cybersecurity capacity, and you're never secure enough, so you need to have the capacity to be able to cope up every now and then. The second thing, from a resiliency perspective, investment on infrastructure is key. So we are expanding our investment in the infrastructure, whether it's connectivity or data centers. At the same time, when we're doing implementations, it's always key. When you implement something, you understand the rollback. If you're implementing it today, you understand how we will roll back from it and then how we will move back. So when we looked at payments, for example, we started with the instant payments and instant remittance that started 3 years ago, and it massively exploded. And it became a very critical element. But at the same time, we need to understand how we would roll back. So we didn't close the instant remittance capabilities from the banks in trade-off for that one. No. We started opening more doors for fintechs to start actually delivering that. So that the options are there. If one option is not running, then the other options needs to move on. So, and the adoption itself, you need to be very careful when it comes to the point of when you reach the point when there is no going back. When you reach this point, you need to have alternatives. So when we reached out to, for example, in the digital services part, we started rolling out and reached out more than 200 services with tens of millions of subscribers today. So at a certain point, you still make sure that the service is available no matter what happens to the infrastructure. But at a certain point where there is no go back, you need to have multiple alternatives to be able to deliver that. So that's why the assisted mode, for example, is one of the options. If you couldn't reach out to the digital services by yourself, you can head up to one of the offices to help you, how the queuing works. All of that needs to make sure that we are resilient, we are secure, and we are sovereign in a certain point.
Mr. Badawi, thank you so much, very impressive, and also thanks so much for elaborating a bit further how the collaboration is a very key part in this, as well as we can definitely see also from your contribution that the importance of security and trust in building a sovereign DPI, and thank you so much for giving us this example. By achieving this, or to achieve this, actually, this is something that countries can actually not do alone. For this, they need partners. And this is, I think, and you were also referring a lot on inclusivity, and this gives me also a very good bridge to now talk about development organizations and digital policy in this game. So I would now like to lead over to you, Katharina, and to hear a bit more about how Germany has positioned digital transformation as a key enabler of sustainable development. Germany supports digital ecosystems, emphasizing on transparency, inclusivity, and on interoperability. BMZ's initiatives such as GovStack and the Digital Transformation Centers support partner countries in building locally governed digital systems based on open standards. The goal is to empower countries to design and control their own digital futures while ensuring that systems remain globally compatible and connected. So the first question to you on this panel for today would be, Germany and the EU emphasize the importance of open standards in DPI, even also in days of where digital sovereignty is a very crucial factor for most of the countries. This also is valid for Germany and Europe, for instance. Transparency and trust in fostering digital sovereignty. How can international cooperation now support countries in achieving digital sovereignty without imposing one-size-fits-all solution to them?
Thank you very much. I think we can all agree that one-size-fits-all solutions would be the exact opposite of digital sovereignty. So this is why we are not trying to impose any ready-made solutions on any country, but rather providing them with a toolbox so they can build their digital systems on their own choices and according to their own needs. And this is exactly what we do with GovStack. You already mentioned it, and you know it even better than me. And I think digital sovereignty is not about only ensuring countries can make independent choices that align with their own priorities. So basically, we are providing them with both a toolbox coming together with a user manual, as you might put it. And so we are making partner countries the architects of their own digital framework. And the basics of the GovStack approach are reusable building blocks. So like digital ID, digital payment, data exchange, just to name a few of those very basic functionalities that you need to build a digital system. And these building blocks can be combined with one another, thanks to APIs making them all speak the same language and, in other words, interoperable. So why reinvent the wheel over and over again? Once you have decided on what your house should roughly look like, you can start to build the structure with our toolbox and this user manual, GovStack. And you can still take individual choices on the details, wallpaper or just paint on the walls of your digital house, wooden floor or carpet. It is up to you as a respective country to decide on the specific details that you need. And I think you can only gain trust from your citizens if you trust in your own digital infrastructure. And the best way to do so is being able to draft it by yourself. And when you know what is behind the facade, behind the shiny wallpaper, and you know how this works. So what we do with GovStack is we empower countries by providing them with all the tools they need for their respective digital public infrastructure. to build it faster and at lower costs, and most importantly, without making themselves dependent on single vendors or specific products.
Thank you very much, Katharina. So now this gives us also a very good example, Katharina, that cooperation without a prescription, in this case as GovStack, is a very important balance, and that this brings us perfectly to our next panelist here, and which is from the World Bank, dear Yolanda, and as you already mentioned, you're not either, sorry, we weren't able to change this picture before. So Yolanda, so the World Bank has become a major catalyst for digital public infrastructure development, supporting over countries worldwide through investments, policy guidance, and technical assistance. Its digital transformation framework emphasizes the importance of trusted digital ID, inclusive connectivity, and data governance, all built on open standards and international ownership or institutional ownership. So my first question to you on this panel would be, the World Bank supports countries at different stages of digital maturity. How do you help to ensure that DPI investments strengthen local ownership and institutional capacity, also in your role responsible as a practice manager for digital for development in Latin America and the Caribbean? Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. I would like to build on the experiences of Kenya, Egypt, and of course, GovStack, because what we have here is not only a development bank, but an international ecosystem that is key to make implementation an agile possibility. Going from 200 to 2,000 services is 22,000, right? It's not easy. So you need to have an entire ecosystem supporting that effort, and in that ecosystem I also mean diversity of platforms, service providers, the right ICT procurement policies. You also refer to cybersecurity, an entire ecosystem of talent, and that's what we do at the bank. We are a knowledge bank. That means that we really invest in learning and iterating every time we design an operation to make sure that we do it with what the country needs and according to their context. We also are a financing institution, but in how you design the intervention is very important to coordinate with the countries how they would like to move that financing support to make sure that they build the ecosystem that can maintain their DPI over time, right? And the third element is the convening power. And I would like to share two examples on how this come into place. We work with Dominican Republic. We are supporting them in a very important digitization project that allows not only to reach scalability, but also to iterate new approaches. And one of those new approaches is using verifiable credentials to identify SMEs and be able to quickly access many different financial services. And to do that, you need to coordinate with more than 10 different government agencies to agree on the standards, to agree on the type of technology, to agree on the type of services to be enabled first, to agree on the right safeguards that needs to be in place, to agree on the type of technology that they were going to implement. So the bank is this convenient space, no? All the different organizations got together in the bank offices. They discussed many different elements into bringing this pilot together. And I think that's a very good example on how we are a convening power. The countries are the shareholders of the bank. They own the bank, right? So it's in our best interest that we make sure that every time we coordinate an engagement, that we hear all the voices and that we reflect the principles of openness, collaboration, standard-based, and modularity with very concrete examples. And what I really like about this project is that we presented the idea in the Open Wallet conference a few months ago. We have a functional prototype up and running, and that can only happen when you work in the open and when you work in an ecosystem. And the other example I would like to share is a regional example and how important DPI ecosystems are so relevant. And this is a consortium together with our colleagues of the Inter-American Development Bank, co-develop, and OEAs, which is another multilateral mechanisms that bring together all the countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, and Red Real, which is a convening network of CIOs, regional CIOs that get together every year and define the priorities for the region. So with that consortium, we decided to put funding to create a regional digital identity broker. And it was the technical working groups within that network, the digital identity working group, the interoperability working group, that got together and defined the technical specifications, that defined whether they were going to develop the software or implement a new software, and at the end the countries decided to develop the software. So that is sovereignty in action, when you provide the convening space, but it's the countries deciding how they're going to go into building a regional DPI. And I'm also very happy to share that this idea started last year in annual meetings. We launched the consortium this March, and last week in Guatemala, the initial 4 countries were already using the digital ID broker, and we have more than 12 waiting to be incorporated into this process. And the incorporation into this process is completely open. We do it through an open call coordinated by the colleagues of Red Real. And I would like to emphasize that we feel very proud as a regional ecosystem of this achievement, because you can only get to this level of regional integration, respecting the principles of modularity and openness, when you have trust in this type of institutionality. So Red Real has been around more than 20 years. And our work as a development institution is to support this effort, but respecting that is the countries deciding the standards, the specifications, and how they're going to go about the different use cases that now you can access.
This is also a wonderful example. Thank you so much, Yolanda. And this is great to hear that also which role the bank actually plays in really fostering this, this element of trust mainly, and then also starting from there, but also, of course, going into the collaboration mode so that partners will really meet and discuss what's actually needed also for the region in order to get this scaled and get this done. So I would now like to start maybe into a contextual discussion with all of you. Like you have touched upon many things on also sovereignty, how you're actually implementing this in your countries, but I would be very interested in your opinion from your national perspective or from your organizational perspective on if actually digital sovereignty and global interoperability, if they can truly coexist. And we have heard examples from Yolanda right now and also from others on you here around the panel, also with GovStack. So do you think what would be needed in order to really scale and to build a system that we can regionally, but ideally also worldwide, find more trust in order to gain more interoperability and to get to more prosperity, maybe for the entire world, but especially also for the regions that you might look at. So what is your perspective on this? Maybe we would start with Kenya. Mr. Otieng, Ambassador, would be very happy if you could give us your perspective on this.
Yeah, thank you. I think our strategy as a government, as a people of in East Africa, we've been emphasizing on openness, inclusivity, and local empowerment, because that is the foundation that eCitizen was actually founded on. Kenya has prioritized the use of open source technologies and remain technology neutral, and we always avoid being vendor locked. We, as I said, we emphasize on local technology firms and startups, because eCitizen was a startup. That was an initiative between the World Bank and the National Treasury. That is how eCitizen came to being in 2013, 2014, and then we revamped it in 2022. And then through the digital skills for the youth program, Ajira, whereby the youth actually get the access jobs online. And then the Kenya School of Government, that is, whereby we train our civil servants on new technologies, the do's and the don'ts, what is happening, AI, and all that. And then we also ensure that a robust talent capable of maintaining and innovating on national systems that is enabling sustainability. So those are the fundamentals that we actually are emphasizing on. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this answer. Thank you. And maybe now also the perspective at Egypt. You've touched upon some points on this, but maybe just to cut it short a bit, how is the Egyptian perspective? And global interoperability and digital sovereignty. Actually, what is your perspective on this, and how could you also, maybe as Egypt, contribute with your experience in this already?
Actually, our belief is that sovereignty and interoperability, they can go hand in hand of how the implementations can work. It's sovereignty at the end, if you are actually interoperability. Let's start with interoperability first. Interoperability is based on the information exchange and data exchange that needs to be based on trust. So the trust is not in the technology, it's more of a trust of the ecosystem and the processes that is used for generation of those data. Our latest example of our recognition by the EU for the digital signature that proves that. It was more about how the processes and how the ecosystem is completely governed and regulated in a way that allows us to have a mutual recognition of our root authorities and the certificate issued between the two parts. There is nothing that was consolidated at that point. It was more about the interoperability work of how we trust each other's systems to make sure that everyone maintains his sovereignty, and at the same time we work for the benefit of our constituents and citizens. So if you are more sovereign and you are more governed, you are more capable of joining others, because that's how you show that you have systems and trusts. When we come into elements like DPI, and specifically the item of digital identity, this is where it goes. So if we go into the applications of, for example, something that we have been all using for decades, which is passports. Any country does not allow anyone to, unless they trust how the process of the passport issuance is done, how it's properly governed by those entities. And passports are a completely sovereign element. Nothing can touch the sovereignty of passports issuance or national IDs issuance in any country. At the same time, how do we trust actually the movement of people from one country to another with those passports? This is where international bodies like the ICAO came into place, when they set up the standards of how we do actually recognize each other's passports. So that's an interoperability that maintains sovereignty that has been implemented for decades today. The same way the IATA have been working through the different airline segments and how the transportations and the PNR data is moving. So all of those are applications of sovereignty with interoperability. The same way banks have been doing it for many years. We have the SWIFT network, we have multiple networks that was done. But that didn't prevent countries from developing their own national schemes of payment exchange to drive that in a more cost-effective manner. So driving more sovereignty and pushing into more digital sovereignty is actually what gives the accountability and the trust in the ecosystem of that company, of that country, to open up for the doors for cooperations with another ones. When I come to the point of how actually you become more sovereign, how actually you start actually having your own decisions, it's about the diversity of the technology. Open source is a solution, yes, for economical efficient rollout of DPI and implementations of DPI. But at the same time, we need always to remember that R&D from companies, commercial, that have perpetual capabilities, they always still have some drive ahead in some of those technologies. So the diversity of our procurement of technology needs to be very carefully balanced when it comes to the open source, local development, and international products. And it's not about the fit for purpose discussion, it's more about the balance of the buckets of the investment where it comes from. So in countries that are looking for foreign direct investments to come in, you always have to remember that you have to open your doors for commercial companies to come in and start selling their businesses, because they need to invest into skills and so. But the key important element in sovereignty is the skills. Because people build this. People build the AI, people build the infrastructure. So having the skills within the country is the basic element of sovereignty. So investing more and more into the people, and this is our methodology. We have been graduating from the ministry's program by itself around 500K every year in different domains. That's in addition to the basic education for STEM that's coming up with millions every year. So those kind of capacities has been exporting services to all of the neighborhood countries and all of the Europe and the different parts of the world. But at the same time, those are the arms and the minds that are building what we see as Digital Egypt and what we see the future with. So having the sovereignty is key to have the brains and the minds to do that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Badar. We absolutely agree that capacity development is like a very crucial element to really build digital sovereignty also into the future, is to really understand and to own the house analogy, to understand what you're actually owning, and then you can really think of how the other layers can be provided in order to be more secure in this. Because capacity development is also something that the German Development Corporation is very much looking into. I would also like to ask you, Katharina, what do you think? How can digital sovereignty and global interoperability work together best? And would you also maybe have a wish actually in the collaboration in this global DPI ecosystem here coming together also in Cape Town this year? So how could we come together more closely in order to reach for this, and how could we contribute this?
Yeah, actually, thank you. I fully agree with you. Digital sovereignty and openness go hand in hand and must go hand in hand, because openness also opens your country to new opportunities. And apologies for talking about Kenya, but Kenya is one of the best examples when it comes to, you're waiting right now for the EU Commission's decision on adequacy, which means once this decision is taken, the European digital market will be open for Kenyan enterprises. And this is such a great opportunity for Kenya, and also the other way around. So it's like a win-win situation. Also, European enterprises can come in, and the obstacles to do so then are much lower, because you have set your privacy standards to aligned with European standards, and this is a very great opportunity. And so now from this specific example to the more global approach, this is exactly what we are trying to do with GovStack. And Yolanda, you also mentioned how difficult it is to get together all the stakeholders and discuss common standards with them, common safeguards. And this process is what we would like to make a little bit easier with the GovStack approach. So if there are basic standards that are already on the ground and that you can agree upon, then this makes it much easier to find the specific solutions. And so this is exactly why GovStack doesn't come with ready-made plug-and-play solutions, but rather with a rough structure. So on the other hand, then you can build interoperable solutions on this ground, but still you can adapt this easily to your regional context. And I'm really happy that we are really working together closely with both Kenya and Egypt on this. And so it gives you back, it empowers you as a country to build the system just in the way you need it. And still, if you remain open, this opens far more opportunities to cooperate with other stakeholders, with other countries, and also it makes it easier to link, to find the link between government on the one hand side and private sector on the other hand. So my wish would actually be dare to be interoperable, dare to be open, and don't reinvent the wheel 1,000 times as we actually have sometimes done and still do in Germany, but don't tell anybody.
Thank you so much. Super. Yolanda, maybe to close this round also on this and having the perspective of the World Bank on this would be also, of course, very interesting to all of us. What's your perspective as the World Bank? And do you actually, as the World Bank, in the programs you set up, there were good examples in it already, but what's your perspective on this? And how would you also, as the World Bank, encourage the international donor community, but also countries to get more interoperable and build the sovereignty by this at the same time?
I think, first of all, making sure, and our colleague from Egypt referred to it, there are so many things available. Like when I was the national CIO in Mexico, it was 2012. We didn't have a DPI summit back then, right? So the fact that we have a convenient space, the fact that we have GovStack, that's why I truly believe in initiatives like GovStack, because if you visit the documentation system, the specification, the sandbox, that's exactly what every country does. And when you think about a country like Mexico, we have 32 independent states, 2,445 independent municipalities, each of them with their own stack, 299 federal agencies. Just orchestrating that through the councils, in our case, to an interministerial commission for the development of e-government takes a lot of time. Just agreeing on how we're going to document our different platforms, how we're going to interconnect our different applications. So a global community like it is here today is here to help any country accelerate the process of having your foundations right, and then be ready to incorporate any new layer of emerging technologies. For example, artificial intelligence. You want to leverage artificial intelligence, you need to have very strong registries. You need to have very strong consistency in your data sets. You need to have the right data protection laws in place. You need to have the right interoperability schemas in place. Not only within your countries, like in the case of Mexico, we are a federation, so we need to do a lot of internal coordination, but then with the region, with the rest of the world. That can only happen when we have spaces to convene and agree on those standards. And therefore, you see a lot of engagement from the World Bank in co-hosting this type of activities, but really in always giving the agency and the decision to the countries. And I would like to also share another initiative that we launched to help accelerate the development of digital skills. And we did this in partnership with Coursera. We launched a program called Vincula LAC, and we did the same, open call. We just set the framework, and we tell all the countries in Latin America and the Caribbean propose, how would you use 5,000 scholarships to complement your current national digital skills program? And it was amazing to see the diversity of priorities that the country has. Some countries prioritize using the scholarships to train public sector digital teams. Other countries prioritize to use the scholarships to recognize best students in middle school that they were already providing a computer and internet, but they didn't have high-level certifications that they can get through online training. So when you put a platform, when you use the convening power of an organization like the World Bank, but then when you allow the country to say, this is my context, this is my need, if you're going to give me 5,000 scholarship, this is where it makes more sense to me. And through the program, we provided the convening space, first of all, to give visibility to digital inclusion teams, that they do amazing work in building the necessary capabilities to keep the digital transformation ecosystem in a country up and running. We give them the space to create a community of practitioners, because right now we live in an era of abundance, and I strongly believe on this. The problem is not having the catalog of an online platform with 14,000 different courses. It's how you design the learning paths according to what is relevant for the specific digital skill program that you're putting in place. If you give just the license to any person, they will never finish a course because you have 14,000 options. But if you prioritize training for cybersecurity, then you create a learning path on cybersecurity. Costa Rica also participates. They created learning paths for DPI because they were working on their digital signature program and their digital identity. So the beauty is trust that the country is conscious of their needs and their context, and then use the convening power of the bank, the knowledge of the bank, the financing of the bank to make sure that those needs are structured and can scale.
Thank you so much, Yolanda. Very impressive, and thank you very much also for presenting those initiatives that are truly important, I would think, to really make a step forward here. So, dear ladies and gentlemen, I have good news for you, and so I think, and dear panelists, if you allow, I think we will have time for 2 questions from the audience, because I also think this topic that we're currently discussing here might be also very interesting for the audience. So if I may ask someone, I would ask, we may take 2 questions, and I would like to ask you to quickly introduce yourself, who you are, and who you are directing your question to.
Hello, my name is Scott Russ-Patrick, University of Oslo. Last week I was actually at the International Digital Sovereignty Conference, And a lot of talk there around what is not working for digital sovereignty. And that's my question to you. From your experience, there's a lot of positive statements. This is what we're doing, this is what we should do, this is how successful it is. But obviously, there's hard-learned lessons along the way. What should countries, ministries not be doing that detract from digital sovereignty?
Is there someone who feels ready to take the question, maybe from the country?
Maybe I could.
Maybe you can both, but very quick answer.
Inclusivity is very important. One, for software to work, in Kenya, for example, like M-Pesa. Why did M-Pesa work? Why is e-citizen working? It was because it's a local innovation and coated with international partnerships like GovTech, like the World Bank, like where we came from. So with that, we believe that is how we can be able to achieve that is how the software and the GPI can be able to work very effectively. And I would like to say this, maybe as my closing remark, if you allow me. Kenya as a country, we've done all these things. We are now having affordable housing. People can now apply for houses online. We have e-health. We have e-education. We have open universities. We've done all this. But what are we seeing? What are we seeing in the next 5 to 10 years as a country and as a region? What we are seeing is with this, because the National Treasury can now see, because this is a reality, figures don't lie. Our current budget is about 4.5 trillion, 3.8 trillion. E-Citizen is collecting around 1.6 trillion. That's our projection in the next 1 year. The Kenya Revenue Authority will be collecting around 3 trillion. That's a total of 4.6 trillion Kenya shillings. So we'll have a surplus of 800 billion Kenya shillings. So it's mind-boggling. So what we are seeing is, with that surplus of money, we'll be able to build our infrastructure, our schools, enhance electricity, connectivity in the next 3 years without needing any financial assistance from anybody. So to us, what we are saying, that is economic liberation. And what my sister here was saying, if we can be able to open up, we open up the markets. Goods and services can be accessed easily without any inhibition. So without foundation that you are asking, my brother, that is how we can be able to reach there. So Kenya as a country, we are proud, and we are inviting our partners, our neighboring countries. Please come and see what we are doing so that we can be able to move together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ambassador. Maybe a very quick response from Egypt. Mr. Badawi, would you like to respond as well?
Yes, thank you so much. And definitely there are few blockers that needs to be cleared out on the way for driving digital sovereignty in general. One of them is, of course, budgets. That's something that's common everywhere. In addition to some of the rareness of the critical infrastructure elements, like similar to the GPUs and all of those elements, today they are driving a high market supply, a high market demand, but actually the supply is very limited. So actually the limited supply versus the demands of the digital sovereignty and the limitations of budgets, I would say, I would close, that are the two main blockers that we see along the way that most of the countries are facing, are budgets and the scarcity of some of the supply materials.
Super, thank you very much. So I think we will now have a very final question to all of you, and I would like you all to be crisp and like to stay within just 1 minute. So I think it's quite similar actually to the question that we just had from the audience, because we would now like to ask all of you, actually, if you could give one recommendation to governments in designing their today's DPI systems to be both sovereign and connected. So what would it be if you would have to pick one? We could start, I would say, would we like to start with you, Katarina, and then we do the round to the back.
Thank you very much. I think, as we've already mentioned, capacity building is key, actually. And especially when it comes to digital sovereignty. Digital sovereignty comes with a certain price, actually, because you need to shift the capacity just from the enterprises into the governments, actually. If you don't have anybody, any experts within your government who know what they are doing when they're saying, okay, we switch to open source now, then you will have huge problems, I guess. So I think this is what all governments, and I'm not excluding any government, will have to do when they go to openness and to digital sovereignty. They need this knowledge, not very technical, deep technical knowledge, but they need at least basic knowledge. Otherwise, they won't be able to control all this. Up to now, most people just take the easy way, and so, okay, I just rely on a commercial product. So, and then all the maintenance and every problem that occurs, I can just rely on the team of this enterprise who has developed that. And there's a shift in the mindset. So you have to take the responsibility yourselves. But then, if you do this, you can get really digital sovereignty. And this is, of course, what is the advantage of this approach. This was, I think, longer than 1 minute, sorry.
Maybe two. Thank you so much, Katharina. But I think a very important point with the capacity development, capacity building you touched upon. So your one recommendation, Mr. Ambassador, from your experiences in Kenya, how to be sovereign and connected at the same time, and when you're now building your DPI, what would it be? What's most important from your perspective?
I think for me, I would maybe digress a bit. I would put it at political commitment of the highest level, because that is fundamental. Because that was our foundation for achieving the DPI, and I would recommend that all other governments, maybe that is how they need to start, because without that top political commitment, you can never be able to achieve all this. Thank you.
Very important point as well. Thank you so much. And now I would move over to you, Yolanda. What's your one ingredient?
I'm very inspired with what everyone has said, and I think to reach sovereignty, policymakers need to take informed decisions. And this is an amazing ecosystem. And it's important that as digital leaders do take the time to get to know what is available out there. What type of standards, what type of organizations are behind XYZ initiative, what type of initiatives your country is already a member of. And this is a very important responsibility, because when we are leading digital, when we are part of a cabinet, we are entitled to make decisions. And we're making decisions that are impacting the millions of lives of our population, not only during our tenure, but many years after. That decisions I took back in 2012 are still up and running, and I'm very happy and I feel very proud, because millions of Mexicans get millions of services every day. And I was part of that history in my country of deciding what type of approaches, what type of standards, what type of governance will help our country build another layer. No? We have new governments in place, we have new political leaders in place, we have new digital teams in place that need to get to know what is it currently up and running, what is new that you would like to bring into your enterprise architecture, and that is super key. And I would like to close with a call to action. We are talking about how important is here building skills, and how important is here to use the convening power of international organizations and international ecosystems. We launched on Monday the third cohort of the Women in GovTech Challenge, and this is an initiative that started 2 years ago, part of the GovStack community, to close the gap. Only 30% of GovTech professionals in the world are women. If we want to design better technology that is inclusive and that represent the needs of all the population in the world, which is men and female, we need everyone on the table designing the technology, making the decisions, working as a global ecosystem. Everyone is welcome to participate. Help us promote the challenge. You can find all that information in GovStack Global website. It's a 6 weeks training, And it's a global community of practitioners that is really looking into putting all these principles into actions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this call, Yolanda. I can absolutely second that, and thank you so much for mentioning it. Now, maybe last but not least, Mr. Badawi, from your wide Egyptian expertise that you have already in all this topic, so what would be your one recommendation, or what would you put first on the list if you would give a recommendation to other countries? Thank you.
Of course, I would just rely on what was built from the team and from the panelists, dear panelists. I will just add one thing. It's more about democratizing the digital transformation itself. So it needs to be part, because today it's done by a generation, tomorrow it will be done by another, and then the day after that it will be done by another. So the democratization of that will make sure of the sustainability of the digital sovereignty itself. It's not only about skills, it's about moving from the consumer's mindsets into the maker's mindset. And moving into the maker's mindset is something that requires democratization, that you give the chance for everyone who makes something to be able to implement it, to be able to roll it out, to be able to present it, to be able to be part of the whole decision-making process. So the democratization and taking in the children of today that are the builders of tomorrow, they need to be part of the decision that they're looking at right now. Because if you're building sovereignty today, this will stay for decades and decades. So you need to make sure the ones that will survive through that will go. And I remember one quote that was mentioned in one of the series is, the world is much better when old men, they plant trees, they don't know that they will not be experiencing the shades of. So plant it today for the children of tomorrow.
I mean, this would be a beautiful closing for this panel. Mr. Badawi, I couldn't have said this better. Thank you so much for this perspective, next generation, to really bring them in the driver's seat and to really understand. So what we're building today will remain, and so the more important that people that will benefit or suffer, whatever we come up with, will be there tomorrow. So that really take this perspective into any planning, and even more important, to do the capacity building work, and also Yolanda Women in GovTech Challenge Lounge cohort number 3. So very great. So I think the audience, my dear panelists, thank you so much for this wonderful discussion. I think I would close with, I think one thing we have learned on this panel today is that digital sovereignty is one thing, not isolation. So I think it's very important, and this is what we have heard a lot. Also, if it comes to digital sovereignty, it's not about only technologies, it's very much about trust and collaboration. And in order to build this trust, I hope we could contribute over this panel today. Thank you so much for your wonderful contributions, and thank you to the entire audience for listening to this panel, and wishing all of you a wonderful lunch and rest of the DPI Summit 2025. Thank you very much.